For more than 900 years, the sacred blade called Kalthor stood in the center of Zalor Prime, a powerful alien world ruled by warlords, noble houses, and ancient priests. The sword was stuck in a glowing stone. It was said to be a gift from the star creators left behind long before the first cities of the aliens were even built. Many believed it held great power. Some called it a weapon, others called it a curse. One thing was certain: no one had ever moved it. Every 10 years, the strongest warriors from all over Zalor came to try. They brought machines, chants, science, and magic. They pulled with ropes, used psychic force, and even tried blood sacrifices. But every time, the blade remained still. Not once did it shake. Not once did it glow. Not once did it choose. This year was no different. The grand arena surrounding the blade was full of alien spectators. The crowd roared as the next challenger, a four-armed brute named Turox, stepped forward. He roared. He flexed. He slammed his fists into the ground. Then he grabbed the hilt of the sword and pulled. Veins bulged across his skin. His arms trembled. The ground cracked beneath him. But the blade didn't move. Boos echoed through the arena. Turox fell to his knees, gasping. A priest in golden robes stepped forward and raised his hand. The blade has rejected him. The crowd turned silent. Turox was carried away. Then a voice spoke quietly behind the crowd. "Excuse me. What's going on here?" Heads turned. A man stepped forward. He wore no armor, no cloak, no glowing badge. Just a dusty coat, a half-broken backpack, and a calm face. He looked human. He was Drace Carter, a space explorer from Earth who had crash-landed on Zalor Prime just days ago. The aliens stared at him. Some laughed. Some looked confused. "What is that thing?" one asked. "He smells like smoke and metal," another hissed. A guard walked up to Drace. "You are in the sacred zone, outsider." Drace raised his hands. "Sorry, I didn't know. I'm just passing through." The priest, curious, looked closely at him. "You are from Terra, the human world?" Drace nodded. "That's right." Strange silence fell over the arena. The priest whispered something to the others. Then he looked at Drace and spoke loudly. "Would you like to try the blade?" Drace blinked. "Me? Oh no. I'm not here for that. I just needed directions." The crowd laughed again, but the priest smiled oddly. "Try anyway." Drace shrugged. "Sure, why not?" He stepped forward. The arena went quiet, no drums, no cheers, no light, just stillness. He reached the glowing stone. The sword shimmered faintly. He gripped the hilt with both hands. It felt warm. Then he pulled. No effort, no sound, no struggle. The blade slid free like a whisper in the wind. Gasps filled the air. A shockwave rippled through the ground. The sky above flashed. The sword glowed, but not red like when others tried. It glowed white, pure, alive. Drace looked at it, confused. "Is that normal?" he asked. The priest had fallen to his knees. Others did too. The guards dropped their weapons. And then the blade spoke. Not out loud, inside Drace's mind. "You are late, human, but you are here, and we must begin." Drace staggered back. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. The priest stood up slowly, voice trembling. "It has chosen, after 9 centuries." The sword pulsed once. Then ancient stone tablets nearby began to glow. Symbols lit up. Lines moved across the walls. And one message appeared in glowing alien script. "When the unseen one lifts the blade, the sky shall split and the truth shall rise." Drace looked up at the priest. "What does that mean?" The priest did not answer. Because far above them, the clouds twisted. The sky began to crack open. The clouds above Zalor Prime were no longer soft or silent. They twisted like smoke in water, dark, slow, and unnatural. The sky, once glowing with 3 suns, was now split by a deep blue crack that reached into the stars. No alien had ever seen anything like it. The crowd in the arena stepped back, silent, staring up in fear. But Drace Carter, the human, just stood there, holding the glowing sword that had rejected all others for nearly 1,000 years. His heart beat faster, not from fear but from something deeper. The blade was alive, and it was speaking to him. You are the one chosen not by blood, but by balance. The time has come to awaken what sleeps beneath. Drace looked around. What does that mean? What's under us? The voice inside, his head whispered back. A lie. A history buried in stone. A warning that was never heard. Near the top of the arena, a council of alien priests gathered, their faces pale. The high priest, a creature with long silver horns and blue-green skin, opened a forbidden scroll that had not been touched in centuries. He read aloud with a trembling voice. In the year of the unmoving blade, a being from the stars, not of our world, shall lift what we cannot. When that moment comes, we must not celebrate. We must prepare. The younger priests looked confused. Prepare for what? The elder's eyes filled with fear. For the trial. Meanwhile, Drace felt his feet pull toward the center of the platform. The ground beneath him began to tremble and cracks formed in the shape of a perfect circle. Suddenly, a section of stone lowered like an elevator into the ground, a hidden passage. No one had seen it before. No alien scroll mentioned it. Only the sword knew where to go. The blade pulsed again in his hand. Step forward, chosen. Let the memory awaken. Drace turned to the crowd. Do I go in? No one answered. Most just stared at him in disbelief. Only Sitha, a young alien historian, stepped forward from the crowd. Her eyes wide but her voice steady. I'll go with you, she said. You're not afraid? Drace asked. She shook her head. Not of you. I studied the ancient texts. I always knew the blade didn't belong to us. Drace nodded. Let's find out why. As they descended, lights came alive along the walls, symbols that looked alien, but rearranged themselves into English. Whoa, Drace muttered. That's not creepy at all. Sitha touched the wall gently. These are not just lights. They are memories, recorded by the builders. The tunnel opened into a giant underground hall, bigger than any stadium on Earth. At the center was a circle of floating stones, each glowing, each rotating slowly around a platform. On the platform stood a statue of a human, not Drace, but a warrior in ancient armor, holding the same sword. The room lit up fully as Drace stepped forward, and then the past came alive. A vision formed in the air, made of light and sound, an ancient war, aliens and humans, side by side, fighting against something massive, a creature made of shadow and teeth, as large as a mountain. The sword was the only thing that could hurt it. A voice from the vision echoed. One blade, one bond, one blood not of this world shall carry the light. Then the scene shattered like glass. Drace and Sitha stood in silence. Sitha spoke first, her voice soft. We were never meant to lift the blade. We were meant to protect it, until your kind returned. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the cave. An explosion. Screams from above. Drace looked up at the ceiling. What was that? Sitha's face turned pale. It's the royal guards. They've declared you an enemy of the crown. Drace's grip tightened on the sword. I didn't do anything wrong. But they don't understand, she said. They still believe the old stories, that if the blade ever moves, Zalor will fall. Another boom. Dust fell from above. Sitha grabbed his arm. We have to go. Now. As they ran back toward the rising platform, the blade's voice echoed. Once more in Drace's mind, you have awakened the truth, but truth is feared by those who built their world on lies. They will try to bury you. Again. Back in the arena, alien soldiers surrounded the platform. They pointed weapons, their eyes full of fear, not anger. Drop the blade, one of them shouted. Drace stepped forward, slowly. I didn't come here to fight. But you came here. With the blade, another said. That's the same thing. Sitha raised her hands. He didn't steal it. It chose him. No alien has ever lifted it, a guard yelled. Drace raised the blade slowly, not to attack, but to show it. The moment it left his side, it glowed again. The soldiers stepped back. One even dropped to his knees, and far above, the crack in the sky widened. From beyond it, something was watching. The sky above Zalor Prime was torn. A deep crack stretched across the clouds, glowing with blue fire, as if space itself was bleeding. Everyone could see it now, even from the far deserts and oceans of the alien world. But only Drace Carter and Sitha had seen what waited beneath the surface. And now, the blade wanted to show them more. Inside, the temple's inner chamber, the sword pulsed in Drace's hand. Then it spoke again. Not in words, but in images. His eyes turned white, his breath froze, and suddenly, he wasn't standing in the temple anymore. He was standing in a memory. The air was thick with fire. Stars blinked above a shattered sky. Planets in the distance burned like candles. Drace stood in the middle of a battlefield, but he wasn't himself. He could feel another body, taller, stronger, covered in ancient armor. He looked around. Aliens, many species, fought shoulder to shoulder with humans, their faces covered in dirt and blood. Above them, a massive shape moved through. Space, a creature the size of a moon, made of black metal and glowing red lines. It looked alive, but not alive like a beast, alive like a god gone mad. The humans called it the Nullborn, a creature born from silence and emptiness. It consumed light, killed stars, broke minds, and they were losing the war. Drace could feel the other warriors panic, the fear of defeat, the weight of final hope, and then, the sword came alive in his hands. The blade howled like a living thing, cutting through reality. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a key, a lockbreaker, a memory holder, and when it struck the Nullborn, it screamed, the sky cracked, and the creature began to fall. The vision snapped away. Drace gasped, falling to his knees in the present day, back in the temple chamber. His hand still gripped the glowing sword. Sitha rushed over. "What did you see?" she asked. He looked up, his voice shaking. "I saw the end of the last war and the beginning of this one." He stood slowly, trying to steady his breath. That monster, that thing in the vision, it wasn't just defeated, it was buried. Under a planet. Sitha looked around the temple. "This planet?" Drace nodded. The sword was used to trap it, lock it beneath Zalor. And now? He turned toward the cracked sky. "It knows I'm here." Outside, chaos spread. Alien nobles were evacuating. Soldiers were panicking. Prophets screamed that the blade had doomed them all. But, in truth, it was the silence beneath the planet that had already begun to awaken. Drace could feel it in the ground. Low hum, like a forgotten heart slowly beating again. Sitha unlocked another part of the temple, a vault filled with star maps and ancient stone tablets. She pointed to one, covered in dust and glowing runes. "This one? It shows the timeline." Drace wiped the surface. His eyes widened. There were 9 swords in total. Only one remained. Calthor. The rest were lost in the stars during the First War. Each sword was given to a human chosen by the creators, not by strength but by instinct. Text read, "Only one will be reborn to lift the last. When he comes, the locked heart shall open." Sitha looked at him carefully. "You're not just the next bearer. You might be the last one." Drace stepped back. "But I'm not special. I'm just a guy from Earth who likes old ruins and good tea." Sitha smiled. "Sometimes the best key is the one no one expects." Just then, the temple shook violently. A deep, terrible sound echoed from beneath their feet. Boom, boom, boom. The ground split in a distant rumble. A pit opened, far away, and black smoke poured from it. Sitha's eyes widened. "It's breaking free." Drace stared at the sword in his hand. "I think it knows I've seen the truth." Sitha looked around, whispering, "Then it's not trying to kill you." Drace turned to her. It's trying to reach me. Back at the surface, alien leaders prepared their fleets to leave Zalor. We must escape, one general said. Let the sword-bearer deal with it. He awakened it. He can die with it. But a voice on the communication screen replied, That's not just any human. That's a flame we thought we put out forever. And if the blade has awakened again, the galaxy will have to choose, run or stand. Drace and Sitha left the temple. The land around them was cracking. Lightning danced across the sky, even though no rain fell. But Drace looked calm. He finally knew what the blade was showing him. Not a war, not a destiny, but a choice. Zalor Prime had always called itself the jewel of the stars. But now, that jewel was cracking. The skies had split. The ground had trembled, and the sacred blade, once a symbol of peace and pride, had chosen a human. To the alien nobles, it wasn't a miracle. It was a threat. In the high tower of the Zaelorian Council, the EEL royal leaders stood in a glowing circle of light. Holograms flickered. Reports from temples, cities, and warships filled the room. Everyone spoke at once. Evacuate the southern cities. The ground is collapsing near the old mines. The creature, it's waking up. But the High Lord of Zalor, a tall alien with golden horns named Verak, stood silent. Then he raised one hand and the room fell quiet. His voice was cold. The sword has cursed us. For centuries it slept, and now it wakes, because a human touched it. One of the priests spoke up, but the human did nothing wrong. The prophecy, silence, Verak hissed. We control the prophecy, not the other way around. Another noble whispered, we can't let him leave. If the galaxy finds out a Terran holds the blade. Verak nodded. Then we must erase him and rewrite the story. At the same time, Drace and Sitha were racing through a quiet forest valley. Below their feet, the ground rumbled now and then. Soft at first, like thunder in the distance, the creature under the planet was shifting, and something worse. The sky itself seemed to watch them. Drace stopped by a cliff and looked back. I don't trust them anymore, he said. Sitha was quiet. Then she said, Neither do I. They found shelter in an old observatory, built hundreds of years ago by the first explorers. Inside were ancient star charts, dusty books, and broken telescopes. Drace sat near the window, the sword resting against his shoulder. It didn't glow right now. It was listening. He whispered, Why did you choose me? The sword answered in his mind, Because you still question. The ones before you only wanted power. That night, the sky above the observatory glowed with alien moons. Sitha brought food, a warm drink made from local roots. Drace smiled faintly. Tastes like burnt socks and cinnamon. She laughed for the first time in days, but their peace ended quickly. The doors burst open. A full squad of royal guards entered, weapons raised. Sitha stood in front of Drace. You said they wouldn't. Follow us here. I didn't think they would, she said, panicked. The leader of the squad stepped forward. You, human, are under arrest by the order of the council. You are to be transported to orbit for questioning. Drace stood, slowly. I didn't break any laws. Exactly, the alien replied. That's what makes it suspicious. The guards reached for the sword, but it pulsed. A silent wave of force blew two of them back into the wall. The rest opened fire, but their shots bent around Drace, like the air itself refused to harm him. He didn't swing. He didn't attack. He just stared at them. Why are you doing this? The lead soldier gritted his teeth. Because if you live, our world changes. Sitha grabbed Drace's arm. We have to go. They escaped through a hidden path behind the observatory, running toward the canyon cliffs. Their pursuers followed, air bikes lighting up the night sky. One shot grazed Sitha's leg. She stumbled. Drace turned. The sword glowed hot now, humming with energy. "Stop!" he shouted. He raised the blade for the first time in anger. The wind bent toward him, the rocks around him lifted into the air, and when he brought the blade down, the canyon cracked in half. The royal guards fell back in horror. The ground between them collapsed. Dust and light exploded outward. On the other side of the broken canyon, Drace knelt beside Sitha. He touched her wound, and the sword glowed again. The skin began to heal. Sitha stared at him. "You're not just holding the blade now. You're becoming part of it." Drace looked down at his hand. "I don't know if that's good or bad." Back in the council tower, Varric watched the footage in silence. A hologram flickered beside him, showing Drace splitting the canyon. One noble asked, "Do we send more troops?" Varric turned toward them, voice quiet but sharp. "No, we send a message." He leaned closer. "Tell the galaxy this: the human has stolen the sword, and now he threatens our world. If he won't become our hero, then we will make him our villain." The stars above Zalor Prime were shifting, not moving, shifting. One of them, brighter than the rest, began to flicker, and then it blinked out, just gone. No explosion, no sound, just silence. Sitha noticed it first. She pointed to the sky, as she leaned against Drace, still limping slightly from the canyon escape. "Look," she whispered. "That's not a star. That's a cloak." Drace raised the sword, and the blade pulsed, not with heat, not with light, but with recognition. It has returned, as planned, as feared. Drace stared upward, his breath catching. Because the light in the sky didn't disappear. It descended. From orbit, the star-shaped light unwrapped like a flower of steel. Beneath its skin was something ancient. A ship, no, a construct, too massive to be made by mortals. Its surface wasn't metal. It was etched crystal, glowing with millions of tiny runes. Its engines didn't fire. They hummed softly, like a deep, holy sound. The sky above Zalor turned pale gold, and as the ship neared the planet's atmosphere, Drace felt the sword pull toward it like a magnet meeting its other half. The sword spoke again. "This is the Ark, the final piece. The place where I was born. The truth cannot hide anymore." Without asking permission, the blade lifted from Drace's hand and floated. A beam of golden light came down from the ship, wrapping around the sword. And Drace. Sitha screamed his name, but it was too late. He was gone. Inside the Ark, the air was cold and perfect. No dust, no wind, no time. Drace stood in the center of a round chamber surrounded by mirrors that didn't reflect his image. They reflected his future, each one showing a different version of him. A soldier, a king, a destroyer, a martyr. He backed away, overwhelmed. Then a voice spoke. Not from the blade this time, but from the ship itself. "Welcome, final bearer. You have awakened the blade of memory, and now you must see what came before, and what comes after." The mirrors changed. They showed 9 humans across time. The previous wielders of the sacred swords. Each had fought. Each had died. Some saved worlds. Some failed, but none survived long after awakening the true power. Then the last mirror showed him, standing at the edge of Zalor, facing the rising darkness, the Nullborn, the creature that had once been buried beneath this planet, now stirring again. Drace stepped forward. "Why me?" The voice answered, "Because the others wanted glory, but you only wanted truth." Suddenly the chamber changed. It dissolved into stars, and Drace stood in space, floating freely, watching Zalor below. From the planet's southern pole, a storm was rising, black, endless, and pulsing with red light. It was the Nullborn, no longer asleep. No longer weak. The planet itself began to bend under its pressure. Drace fell to his knees, gasping, "I can't stop that. But the voice replied, "You don't stop it with power. You stop it with choice." The blade reappeared in his hand, but it looked different now, longer, brighter, lighter, alive. This is the true form, the completed key. It will obey only your heart. Back on Zelor, panic had turned to full-scale retreat. Ships left the cities. Royal towers collapsed from underground pressure. The sky over the capital turned black-red as the Nullborn's shadow reached upward. Sitha stood alone, looking toward the heavens. "Come back," she whispered, and then from the clouds, Drace fell, not like a falling star, like a chosen flame. He landed in a crater, sword in hand, glowing like a second sun. The entire world stopped to watch. The Council's last war fleet surrounded him within minutes. Varek's face appeared on every screen. "You dare return?" he shouted. "This is your fault. Your sword woke the beast." Drace didn't shout back, he simply raised the blade. It responded to his thoughts. Golden waves of energy pushed outward, shutting down the fleet's weapons without breaking a single ship. "I didn't come to fight you," Drace said. "I came to finish what your ancestors were too afraid to face." Behind him, the ground exploded. The Nullborn began to rise. The creature didn't have a face, only burning mouths across its body, and 1,000 wings made of void. It let out a sound that shook the planet. Drace stood alone. The sword lifted itself, and then it split into two. The second blade hovered in the air, arm waiting. Sitha ran forward. "I'm not a warrior." Drace looked at her, calm. "You're not supposed to be. You're supposed to be you. And that's enough." She took the blade. Together they stood, two lights against the black storm. And then they ran forward. Not to die. Not to destroy. But to free what was trapped inside the beast. Beneath the ground of Zelor Prime, something ancient had opened. Its eyes. The creature was no longer sleeping, it was awake. The Nullborn had risen, it was not made of flesh. Not truly. It was made of forgotten things, broken stars, crushed memories, dead hopes, and voices that no longer had mouths to scream. Its wings did not flap. They simply unfolded across the sky, covering the alien world in a terrible shadow, and yet, at the very center of this darkness, Drace Carter and Sitha stood. Two lights, two blades, two heartbeats facing what no alien or human had ever dared to face. The ground beneath them shook again, not from footsteps, from tears, cracks. In reality, pulled open by the presence of the creature, Sitha gripped her sword tightly. "We can't beat that, look at it." Drace didn't move. His blade floated beside him, glowing softly. "I don't think we're here to beat it," he said. Sitha stared. "What?" Drace looked at the creature again, not with fear, with understanding. The sword didn't call it evil. It didn't say destroy it. He placed his palm on the blade. It pulsed once, and then showed him everything. Inside Drace's mind, images flashed faster than light. A galaxy full of peaceful planets. A massive war. A weapon created not by the enemy, but by the creators themselves. A living vault. A being designed to hold their mistakes, their rage, their failed creations. A prison that became aware. The Nullborn was never a monster. It was a memory. Drace opened his eyes. "It's not trying to kill us," he whispered. Sitha looked around, panicked. "Could have fooled me." Drace raised his hand, and the sword floated forward. Slowly. The Nullborn paused. Its mouths closed. Its shadow stopped spreading. Sitha whispered, "What are you doing?" Drace stepped toward it. "I'm returning something that was stolen." He thought of the visions, the first warriors, the builders, the way they locked this being underground, not to protect the galaxy, but to forget. The Nullborn had held the pain of 1,000 worlds, the silence of every destroyed home, the cries of all those erased by war, and when Drace came with the blade, the last key, It finally had the strength to rise, not to destroy, to speak. The sword hovered before the Nullborn's core, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the creature wept. Dark clouds turned silver. Rain fell, but not burning. Not acid, soft, gentle, like an apology from the sky. Sitha lowered her sword. She understood now. The creature's cries were not battle roars. They were songs, broken songs of a galaxy that refused to remember what it had done. Drace stepped closer. "See you now," he whispered. "I don't hate you. I'm sorry they used you." And then buried you. The Nullborn bent forward, not to attack, but to kneel. It had waited so long for someone to understand. It had been fed lies. It had been locked away. It had been taught it was only a threat. But now, it knew peace. In the Zaylorian Council chamber, alarms blared. Nobles screamed. Why is it not attacking? Why is the human still alive? Where are our fleets? Varak smashed the table. End this. Use the planet's core charge. Wipe it all. But the control panel blinked red. Locked. A message appeared. Control denied. Balance restored. All. Across Zaylor Prime, the shaking stopped. The air cleared. The cracks in the ground began to seal. The stars above flickered back into place. People looked out of their windows and saw two figures standing beneath the kneeling shape of the creature they had feared for generations. One human, one alien. Later in the temple, the swords rested in stone again, side by side, peaceful, quiet. Sitha sat on the steps, watching the horizon. Drace stood beside her, looking tired. "Will they believe it?" she asked. Drace smiled. "They don't have to. They'll see it." In the heart of the Nullborn, now asleep once more in the deep sky, a new chamber had opened. No longer a prison, but a library. A place of memory. A place where no truth would be buried again. The swords had once been weapons of war. Now, they were keepers of story, and those who once followed orders without question would now follow truth. A long time ago, the galaxy believed that only the strongest warriors, the noblest bloodlines, or the oldest empires could change fate. But none of them had moved the sword. None of them had spoken to the stars. None of them had listened to the silence beneath Zaylor. It took someone unworthy, a human wanderer, a man with no title, to do what the galaxy's mightiest never could. Drace Carter stood before the High Council of the Conquered, a massive floating chamber with thousands of leaders, rulers, watchers. He wore no armor, no crown, just dust on his boots and a story in his heart. Sitha stood beside him, her voice calm, strong. "He saved Zaylor," she said. "He saved us all." The lead chancellor, a floating being with eyes of light, leaned forward. "And yet he holds a weapon that split the sky." "I gave it back," Drace said. Murmurs rose in the chamber. "You gave it back?" another asked. "Why?" Drace smiled. "Because I finally understood something." He paused, let his words carry weight, and then spoke, slowly and clearly. "I was never chosen because I was special. I wasn't a warrior, a king, or a prophet. I was chosen because I listened, because I didn't try to control the sword. I let it show me the truth." A silence filled the chamber. The galaxy wasn't used to that kind of strength. Not from humans, not from anyone, and certainly not from someone they had once labeled unworthy. Later, outside the council hall, crowds gathered. Alien children sat on their parents' shoulders. Pilots, merchants, soldiers, scholars. All stared at the man who had changed everything, not with war, not with fire, but with understanding. Sitha turned to him. "You're a legend now." Drace laughed. "Funny. I still feel like a guy who got lost on the wrong planet." She smiled. "Maybe legends always start that way." Above them in the sky, the swords were gone. Not hidden, not stolen, just resting, back where they belonged, in the temple of memory watched over by the Nullborn who now sang quietly in the stars. Not a weapon anymore. Guardian of forgotten truths. A statue was built in the Zailorian capital, but it wasn't a statue of Drace. It was a statue of two figures standing together, one alien, one human, holding nothing but open hands. The plaque read, "The unworthy who became the mirror." He didn't conquer. He reflected what we feared, and what we could become. Many years later, on a quiet planet near the edge of the galaxy, a young alien girl with bright eyes stood before a tiny glowing stone, half buried, half forgotten. Inside, a hum, soft, faint, waiting. She reached out, and the stone shifted, a whisper echoed through the trees. Another heart has arrived. Let the story begin again. Because legends never end, they just pass forward, one open hand at a time.